When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: the flight home. User: HubbyXOXNO. Posted February 1st, 1997.
I looked over and she was gone. That's the only way I know how to start it, because that's the truth of it. One moment, Lisa was right beside me, leaning her head against my shoulder as we flew over the Midwest in one of those packed December flights where you can hardly move your elbows. The next moment, I swear, it was just a blink, just me turning to look out the window at the cloud cover rising like mountains, and the seat beside me was empty. Seatbelt unbuckled, headrest cold, no sign she'd ever been there at all. And somehow, unbelievably, nobody around me seemed to notice her vanish. We'd boarded that flight from Memphis to Pittsburgh the way everyone did. Crowded gate, fake Christmas trees blinking in the terminal, a garbled announcement about overhead space filling up. Lisa held both of our boarding passes while I carried her duffel bag. It had the little embroidered snowman her mother stitched on when she was 9. We joked about delayed flights, overpriced coffee, and whether my brother's kids would still be awake by the time we landed. Everything about it was normal, familiar. I'd taken 100 flights just like it. Once we got to cruising altitude, the cabin lights dimmed and everyone settled into that resigned quiet of a winter flight. People were flipping through paperback thrillers, dozing, removing jackets. Lisa squeezed my hand, told me it'd be good for us to see family before the holiday rush. She always liked the build-up to Christmas more than the day itself. Those in-between moments, the anticipation, the crowded airports and small-town decorations. I remember her smiling, her eyes soft the way they got when she felt calm. And then, she wasn't there. At first, I didn't panic. I figured she'd gone to the lavatory. The seatbelt light was off and the aisle was busy with people stretching their legs. But minutes ticked by. 7, 8, 10. I kept glancing over my shoulder, waiting to see her brown hair bobbing through the row, that annoyed little frown she always wore when someone bumped into her, but nothing. At 12 minutes, the confusion in my stomach sharpened. At 15, it turned to fear. I took off my seatbelt, leaned into the aisle, and flagged a flight attendant. She was younger, dark hair pulled tight, the kind of composed expression airline crews practiced for turbulence and crying children. "Excuse me," I said. "My wife hasn't come back. Could you check if she's waiting in the back?" The flight attendant blinked at me. "Sir, the lavatories are empty." "I know, but maybe she got turned around or something." "Turned around?" she asked gently, like she wasn't sure she'd heard me right. "There are only 2 lavs on this aircraft. Just check," I insisted. She nodded, walked the aisle, checked both doors again, conferred quietly with the other attendant, and came back with that soft, careful voice people use when handling someone fragile. "Sir, there's no one back there." I could feel the first edge of panic cutting up my throat. "What do you mean? She was right there. My wife was in this seat. She was talking to me." Passengers nearby started shifting in their seats, half listening, half pretending not to. The man across the aisle frowned like I was interrupting his nap. The flight attendant crouched down and rested a hand on the seat back. "Sir, the seat next to you has been empty the whole flight." "No," I said, too loud. "No, she boarded with me. We walked on together. She sat right here." I slapped my palm on the empty cushion. "Her name is Lisa Harper." The attendant's face tightened. "Sir, we don't have anyone by that name on the manifest." People were openly staring now. Someone behind me muttered something about crazy holiday travelers. My pulse went so high I could barely hear anything except the roaring in my ears. The attendant tried to calm me down, saying we'd talk with the captain, that everything was fine. But nothing was fine. I kept telling them they were wrong, that she wouldn't leave her bag under the seat, wouldn't just vanish without her coat, wouldn't leave me sitting there like I'd made her up. They brought me water, told me to sit, told me to breathe. The plane kept moving forward like nothing had happened, like a chunk of my life hadn't just been erased in the span of a breath. Someone offered to switch seats so I'd feel more comfortable. I refused. I couldn't look away from the empty spot beside me, the imprint on the fabric where she'd leaned, the faint warmth that shouldn't have already faded. I kept repeating her name until the attendant gently asked me to lower my voice for the comfort of the other passengers. And when we landed, everything got worse. The moment the wheels hit the runway, I saw law enforcement waiting. 2 air marshals, a pair of uniformed police, and someone in a plain suit holding a clipboard. Passengers craned to stare as they boarded, walking straight to me as people were still grabbing their coats. They asked me to stand, asked me to gather my things, asked me with that too even tone to come with them for a quick conversation. "I'm not leaving without my wife," I said. "You're not listening. She was here." "Sir," the man in the suit said, "you boarded alone." "That's not true. My brother is waiting at the gate. He'll tell you." But they kept repeating the same thing. There was no one by her name on the passenger list, no ticket purchased under Harper, no boarding pass scanned, no luggage checked in. According to every document, every record, every witness around us, I had flown alone. My brother was in the security office when they brought me in. I almost collapsed when I saw him because finally, someone could confirm I wasn't losing my mind, but the look on his face was wrong. Concerned, confused, and too calm. "Thank God you're here," I said, grabbing his arm. Tell them Lisa was with me. Tell them we were coming to visit everyone together." He blinked at me like I'd spoken in another language. "Who?" "Lisa!" I nearly shouted. "My wife! You've met her a dozen times. Thanksgiving last year, 4th of July at the lake. My voice cracked. "You know her." He swallowed hard. "You're not married, man." I shook my head so violently the room seemed to lurch. What are you talking about? I've been married for 3 years. 3 years. You were at the wedding. No, he said quietly. You're mistaken. You've never been married. Every word after that felt like someone pushing cotton into my ears. I tried to explain, tried to force memories into place. Her laugh, her handwriting on Christmas cards, the little scar on her wrist from a childhood fall. But the more I reached for them, the faster they dissolved, like trying to grip warm snow. I couldn't find the details, couldn't remember the shape of her voice, couldn't remember what color sweater she wore when we left the house that morning, but I remembered the warmth of her leaning against me on the plane. I remember her hand in mine. I remember looking away for 1 second and finding the seat beside me empty, the air cold, the silence too deep, and I remember her name. At least, I think I do.
Subject: Man in the corner. User: Jimmy Jab 19. Posted June 11th, 1998.
They say every fighter ends up carrying ghosts. Not the dramatic kind people talk about at bars, not memories with soft lighting and sad piano music. No, the real ghosts are quieter, heavier, and patient in a way the living never are. They sit where your eyes don't quite reach, in the corners of locker rooms, in the back row of crowds, in the places where you're too tired or too distracted to turn and face them. I never believed any of that nonsense when I was younger. I figured men made ghosts out of the things they were too soft to deal with head on, but that was before Carson Reed started following me. I didn't kill him on purpose. I want that part understood. He and I both stepped into the bare-knuckle circle behind Hawthorne's mill, knowing the score. No refs, no gloves, no promises, just 2 men, a chalk ring, and whatever price your body pays for survival. Carson was new, scrappy, desperate, the kind of guy who wanted a fast reputation without earning the slow scars that come first. The crowd liked him. They always like the young ones. They think heart can outrun experience, but heart doesn't keep you standing after the 5th round when your ribs won't expand and your vision tunnels down to a thin gray line. Experience does that. So does instinct. So does survival. I caught him with the right cross that connected harder than I meant. He went down and didn't get back up. Someone called for a towel. Someone else cursed. I remember looking at him and thinking, damn, that's the risk. Nobody said the word murder. That's not how it works in those places. You break a man the wrong way, you light a candle, whisper something respectful under your breath, and you carry on. That's the world I come from. For a while, nothing happened. I went back to training. Life was simple. Bruise, heal, repeat. Then, one Tuesday morning at the grocery store, while I was staring at a row of canned beans trying to calculate how broke I could afford to be that week, I felt the itch at the edge of my sight. You know the one, like someone's standing just behind your shoulder, not close enough to touch you, but close enough the air feels different. I turned my head casually, expecting another shopper. Instead, I saw the vague outline of a man down the next aisle. Hands in his pockets, shoulder angled slightly like he was studying me. The second I focused on him, he was gone. Not walking away, not rounding a corner, just gone. I told myself I was tired. Too many late night fights, too many early morning shifts. Fighters hallucinate sometimes. It's not glamorous, but it is true. But then, I saw him again 2 nights later, outside Murphy's bar. It was late. I'd stepped out to smoke, and the alley beside the building was lit by one pathetic yellow bulb. I felt that same prickle along my peripheral vision. I turned my head, and there he was. Same posture, same quiet, hands in his pockets, watching me. The moment I tried to look straight at him, the shape dissolved into the dark like ashen water. This time, my stomach tightened in a way no punch had ever made it tighten, because posture wasn't generic. It wasn't random. It was familiar, and it was Carson's. I didn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? Hey, the guy I dropped in a ring full of drunks is following me around the frozen food aisle? No one in my circle was going to respond with anything other than jokes or concern about my brain. So I kept quiet and hoped it was stress, but the sightings got more frequent. On the bus, in the gym mirrors, in the bleachers at an underground match, always on the edge, always angled just enough that I knew it was him but could never see him clearly. I tried ignoring him, but ignoring something that refuses to be seen head on is harder than you think. One night in late fall, cold enough that my breath fogged the alley behind the old machine shop where a fight was scheduled, I sat on an overturned bucket, wrapping my fists. The concrete under me was damp. The air smelled like rust and sweat. A couple of the guys were arguing about odds. A generator hummed somewhere behind the loading dock. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, focusing on the ritual of wrapping my hands. Thumb, wrist, knuckles, repeat. Trying to settle the jitter in my stomach that had been there when I was younger, and that's when I felt him. It wasn't movement or a sound. It was a shift in the pressure around me, like the night air leaned a little closer. I kept my eyes on the floor, then slowly let them drift to the right, just enough to skim the edge of my vision. Carson stood near the metal cabinet where old tools had been left to rust, his head tilted in that same soft, reflective way, like he was waiting for me to understand something he couldn't say. For the first time, I didn't look away. I didn't even blink. I murmured under my breath, "What do you want?" He didn't move, didn't step closer, didn't fade away either, just stayed exactly where I couldn't fully face him, a presence, a shadow wearing the quiet posture of a man who died with unanswered questions. The bell rang for the next fight. Carson faded then, not fast, not sudden, just slipped slowly backward into that place where the living can't quite follow. I fought that night with a feeling in my stomach I couldn't shake. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of losing. I was afraid of being watched by someone who knew more about the line between life and death than I did. Over the next months, I realized something odd. Carson never appeared after a fight, only before. Sometimes a day before, sometimes an hour, sometimes like that night behind the machine shop. mere minutes. At first, I assumed he was there to remind me of what I'd done, but guilt never sat right inside me. Too many fights, too many hospitals, too many broken noses. You don't survive bare-knuckle rings if you let guilt stake a claim. No, Carson wasn't there for my conscience. He was there because he knew something I didn't. The night it made sense was during a December match out behind an abandoned silo. It was cold enough that everyone's breathing looked like smoke. My opponent was a big guy with knuckles like bricks and eyes that never focused quite right. I'd heard he'd been drinking since noon. That's the worst kind of fighter, drunk, angry, and unpredictable. Not because they're good, because they hit wrong, fall wrong, die wrong. The kind of wrong that doesn't clearly land on either man's conscience. As I stretched my arms, I felt that unmistakable presence at the peripheral edge. I didn't turn, didn't need to. Carson was there, near the old grain chute. Posture sharper this time, not softened like before, and he wasn't looking at me. He was angled toward the man I was about to fight, watching him the way a man watches a cliff edge about to crumble, and suddenly the truth came like a fist to the ribs. Carson wasn't following me because I killed him. He wasn't haunting me out of anger or unfinished business with me. He was warning me about the ring, about the way death sometimes shows up wearing the face of a drunk brawler who doesn't know how close he is to the edge. Carson had died on a wrong fall, a wrong hit. Maybe he remembered the moment before everything went dark. Maybe he remembered my eyes looking down at him without fear. Maybe he stuck around to make sure I didn't meet the same end in the same careless way. That fight went differently. I wasn't reckless. I didn't let adrenaline blind me. I fought like a man who understood someone was trying to keep me alive, and I won, but more importantly, I stayed standing. Carson was gone by the time my hand was raised. I still see him sometimes, not as often, always at the edge of my sight, like a shadow protecting the light. I don't know if he'll ever leave. I don't know if he should. Maybe ghosts don't attach themselves to guilt. Maybe they attach themselves to the places where the world almost broke, and they want to keep it from breaking again. Maybe Carson Reed didn't stay to haunt me at all. Maybe he stayed so death couldn't take two fighters for the price of one.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.